Judson Lapley, Master of Education, CSP, has been speaking and performing for over 20 years. He's been seen on The Today Show, Ellen, GMA, America's Got Talent, Oprah, Tosh.0, and more. He's the world's first viral video celebrity with his finale, The Evolution of Dance. That's his most popular video up to now. But now this new video that we're making today is going to go even bigger. This is going to be the most amazing video. Please welcome to the stage, Judson Lapley. All right, so Judson, you have been speaking a long time in person. When was your very, very first virtual speaking engagement?
On camera virtual would have probably been like the maybe beginning of end of March, like right after kind of the big time shutdown. There was an event that I was supposed to speak at that pivoted unbelievably fast. And that was a live virtual, you know, and I think that's one of the, I think that's always interesting how people define virtual right now. The difference between a live virtual thing and a pre-recorded hybrid, you know, being there in the comment section, but recording something ahead of time in order to ensure that you've got, in case something goes wrong.
Right, but it's really interesting that you had already been doing that. You've been providing video content but now since then you've really embraced this virtual space, the live, the synchronous virtual reality that we're in. It's not VR, it's an
RV.
It's an RV. I don't feel as virtual as I did 3 months ago.
No, and I think that's all. I think it's an excellent point that goes along kind of just with how everyone feels. You know, initially it was kind of like, I was watching a woman last night who had done a pre-recorded 5-minute kind of comedy bit. And she was like, do you remember back in March when we were like excited for Zoom calls and it was all fresh and it was like things, whereas now it's become ingrained and it's such a part of life that it doesn't feel different.
It feels like we just would have done this anyway. Yeah,
I mean, there are definitely differences, but it's no different than, especially from a performer standpoint, than saying, okay, you're going to go into a 1,000-seat auditorium with 1,000 people in there, or you're going to be in a corner in a cafeteria at lunchtime. You know, it was just different venues, and you, through practice and experience, you learn how to work those venues, so to say. And I think this is just a different venue now.
Well, for that first one, were you nervous or anxious about that event?
Yeah, and I still do. Still, my learning curve is still there. The hardest part, I believe, for me especially, is not being able to adjust according to how an audience reacts. You know, you were the first person to tell me that you didn't hear a sound effect that I thought this picked up very well. Oh, no, so if I was using that for a long time in a specific training exercise or a specific bit, that means it's fallen flat every single time, and nobody's been able to tell me that.
We can do a workshop with just folks who use sound props, right? And see, does this sound good?
Yeah, I mean, and that's hardest part is everything you do virtually, even if you watch your own video back, it still doesn't give you how an audience reacts.
Right. I have another video interview with an amazing beatboxer. He's taken the bass out of his beatboxing, the low notes. He's just taken them out because it doesn't function well going through the computer machine.
Yeah, I bet.
It's really interesting. So what are some of the things that you've learned in the last 90 days about the way that you've improved in engaging your audiences in this space?
Yeah, and I kind of look at it from two perspectives. There's the performance side as far as just the equipment and good lighting and good spacing and the energy aspect. And then there's the actual content, what people are capable of doing, what people want to do, what people aren't willing to do. So to say, how to make things interactive and engaging still, even though you might not be able to put people physically together. So I think the first and foremost, I think sound quality and lighting are of utmost importance. Sound quality, because even if your video quality isn't as good because somebody else doesn't have, the sound is always there. You know, that's, if they can still hear you clearly, but the video might be a little choppy, that's better than if the video is clear, but the sound is really bad, if that makes sense.
It does, but also some of your audience members may be out on a walk and just listening in on their phones.
Exactly. And I think I found that to be a lot more relevant than I ever thought. You know, I don't like to do that. I don't like to be on a Zoom call or a hangout or anything like that out just because it's chaotic. But there are a lot of people who have no problem doing that. Just
Right.
so, and then especially the ones that don't turn their video off, and all you see is this shot of them sweating as they're outside walking in the sunshine.
Well, you know, there's a lot of bird watching clubs that use that feature. You know, it makes it more, when everybody's doing it, we can all see the tiny birds in their screens. Do you have any moments that were just like so amazing, and something happened in the virtual realm that would never have happened in an in-person visit?
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. You know, most of the and that's from a performer standpoint or a speaker standpoint. You know, that's one of the other things I have struggled with this virtual world is when it's over, it's over. There's an abrupt finish to everything. So I did an event last night. A friend of mine reached out. Several of us got together and put thank you together for the United States Bartenders Guild. Basically, over the course of the early shutdown of the pandemic, they got about $9 million in donations because some really famous people had heard about this particular group. And it's, you know, 35,000 bartenders belong to this guild out of the 900,000 bartenders that exist in the United States. Long story short, about 500 volunteers sifted through almost 300,000 applications to hand out $9 million in grants. So we put on an event to thank all of them. So we spent the weeks leading up to it working with different people, and we put together this nice little Facebook Live, Zoom, blah, blah, blah. And then when it was all done, everybody logged off. Right. We were like, some of us were texting, and we were like, like you can't bask in the glow of a good event. So I'm sure that moments have happened for participants virtually that maybe couldn't have happened. So I led a thing this past weekend where we had lots of breakout rooms and people were going back to breakout rooms over and over. And I would pop in and kind of walk around, but I couldn't see how the interaction was going other than coming in for a few minutes. And then I couldn't see groups who maybe normally you would see start off like this, you know, start to get more comfortable with the other people that they're with. You know, that's one of the great things about student affairs and training and student activities. You don't always see the immediate result of whatever it is you're doing for them, or the training or the leadership training or the activity you're doing, but it's even less relevant or less obvious now in the virtual setting. So that's a long way to answer.
No, I got you. Yeah. If you were facilitating an in-person with a large room and people were at tables together, it's cool to see the way that they're engaging. Is there a way that, like you said, that you were able to go from breakout room to breakout room? That is a wonderful feature that we have at our fingertips. Yeah. It is a little different because you are really with that group for a very short amount of time. We didn't see what they were talking about before we got there. We don't know what they're going to say once we walk out of the room. But still having that ability and using that technology, I think it's probably been really helpful. For me, it has, and hopefully for you too.
Oh yeah, the breakout rooms are worth their weight in gold, if nothing else, just because that allows you to still have incredible interaction and engagement, in a less chaotic setting. You know, a Zoom of 6 people is fine.
Yeah.
A Zoom of 60 people, it's just pure chaos. If you're trying to have all 60 people without some sort of regimented, okay, one at a time, you get to talk, you know.
Right.
Sometimes it gets hard with just 3 people on a Zoom because you're like, oh, no, you go ahead. Oh, no, you know, we've all laughed at that.
What advice would you give to somebody leading a meeting or an event or a group?
I think one of the more necessary aspects of virtual training, or if you're an orientation leader or if you're a student leader, is the amount of control you need to wield is much higher than before. Mostly just because, you know, let's say if you're an orientation leader, 3 years ago, you got your group, you give them a task and you kind of just let them go. And part of the beauty of it was watching that group figure things out together.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now in the virtual setting, they're not physically in the space with each other. So they lose some of those other communication factors that you don't necessarily get via screen to screen. And so when you're in control, when you're the one running things, I think the instruction needs to be even clearer, including a combination of visual written instructions as well as the audio instructions. You know, very early on, that was something I learned was anytime I was running some game nights, I've been doing some different trivia and game show interactive things. And I learned I was just going to say the question, but then I realized right away that that really wasn't smart. I needed to have both a visual of the actual written clue or trivia question and speak it out auditorially. So that way, A, you cover everyone's bases. So, you know, we don't exclude anyone who might have limitations of any sort. And B, you ensure that that the message gets through. So you have to be extra clear and concise in all of your instructions.
When you say you put it in writing, are you sharing your screen? Are you holding up a piece of paper with words on it?
Both. So depending on which round it is or what we're doing specifically, a lot of times it's sharing a PDF file. I don't know if you found this in Zoom. Sharing PowerPoint seems to not be as functional when it comes to what people can see and what I can actually see as well. So I found that PDF files and just sharing a screen work a little bit better for that. And then other times, if it's a bonus question or if it's something different, I might actually write out a question on I got one of those tiny whiteboards around here somewhere. You know, kind of that fun that makes stuff in the moment as well. But you also want to make sure you've got plenty of pre-stuff. And I've started to look at using Prezi.
Cool. So really, you've really figured out a way to engage by using speaking and writing and sharing that, and that engages the audience because then they're looking at you and they're listening to you, and then that gives them direction. So your advice to orientation leaders or anybody running a meeting is to really be aware of your responsibility to be clear in your direction.
Yeah, and I think it's almost impossible to be too clear. You know, repeating directions, and let's not forget, people are distracted even more so than they were previously. You know, people are more kind when they're in a room and they're looking at you, leading a meeting of any sort. They're less likely to be looking at their phone. But when they're on you know, when you're screen to screen, we all fall into that thing of, well, you know, they're not really watching me specifically. And the same thing when you're giving concise, clear instructions is to always remember to try to look at your camera as much as possible. That's the hardest part is not remembering that you think you're looking at someone, you know, like, Jason, I'm looking right in your eyes. I'm looking right in your eyes, Jason. Why are you not acknowledging me?
Right. Yeah, no, that's something that it totally depends on for me, and I know this isn't about me, this is about us and you, but I sort of intentionally, in these scenarios, wanted to look at you, right? So I'm looking at you because this is an interesting thing. Like right now I'm looking at you. Right now you know that I'm looking at you.
Right.
And so you know that I'm looking at you, but for some reason, and maybe somebody out there in the world can explain this to me, when I watch the video back of these interviews, because I'm looking, just the way that this Zoom works out, I'm actually looking at you when I'm looking at you. So from an audience perspective, I'm being a better listener right now to what you have to say.
And I think that's where it comes back to equipment too.
Yeah.
You know, the Brio is a webcam that a lot of people have talked about, that you can only get it if you pay extra for it on eBay because they're all sold out everywhere. But the reason the Brio is so amazing is because it's a high definition camera that fits right over your computer. So I'm using an external camera through a you know, capture device like that because my camera is an older model on my MacBook Pro, and so this camera is much better picture wise. But that means I lose the ability to see. You know, if I look down at you, you really can tell I'm looking. But if I switch to, you know, let me switch. If I just switch my camera to the actual, then it looks like I'm looking at you. When I'm looking at you, it looks like I'm looking at you a little bit better. Right.
Oh, but there really is a clear difference in the quality of the camera.
Yeah. And so that's kind of, I mean, and everyone's opinion is going to be different on that, and it's kind of up to your own.
Sure.
And again, it kind of goes back to just like in real life, every program, every venue, every audience is different. and figuring out which of those settings will work better. Is it better to do this camera so I can kind of look at you?
Right.
And
Well,
feel
you know, the funny thing is that you and I can never look each other in the eye.
correct. Exactly.
Right now, you could take some time and look at me, and then I could take some time and look at you. But it could be a month from now that the technology's out there, that the camera's in the screen, right? And that when we're looking at each other's eyes, the camera makes it so that it works.
I mean, how cool would that be?
It'd be great. It'd be really fun. Right now, we don't have that, right? So we are working with what we have. And I really, you know, one of the things I'm encouraging all the advisors and higher ed folks and anybody who's teaching is to just embrace the technology and jump right in. And I know that you have something that you called the energy aspect. And can you talk a little bit about that and how that's been effective for your engaging your audiences?
Yeah, I think energy is magnified. If you consider, there's an old adage that money is a magnifier in life, that basically who you are as a human being will get magnified if you become rich and wealthy. So for lack of a better term, if you're an asshole and you become rich, you'll be a rich asshole.
Okay.
If you're an amazing human being and you work hard and you create wealth, you're probably going to be a good human being still. So you have kind of this level area. And if you are a low energy person by nature, I think that gets magnified even tenfold virtually. And so I guess you could say it actually doesn't get magnified. Energy gets deadened.
Yeah, I got you. No, it is. Yeah. I now I get what you're saying. Right?
Yeah.
If you are, if you're quiet, this screen and this venue makes you quieter.
Yes. So everything gets kind of suppressed. It's kind of like noise cancellation headphones.
Yeah.
They cancel stuff out and everything sounds a little quieter.
This is the inverse of the magnifier. This is the demagnifier. So even,
Yeah.
oh, I get it. So the energy aspect is if you bring the energy, even if you brought the energy to the stage, when you bring the energy to the computer, it's
going to be, yeah. So if I come, you know, if you're doing a presentation,
yeah,
and you're not, you know, I'm standing up and I, you know, okay. And I'm normally like, okay, everybody, today we're going to talk about leadership, you know, how important leadership really is in recognizing your ability to have impact on your fellow human beings. In my personal setting, that sounds like I've got enough energy. Like that sounds fine. But when you're watching it visually through a computer, that energy just kind of gets suppressed because you don't feel anything physically. So I believe if you are normally an energy person level at a 7, if you want it to feel like a 7, you need to be at a 9 or a 10.
you got to turn it up.
You got to turn it up. So now I normally am a high energy person already. And I found myself going over the top even to the point where almost like if somebody was here watching it live, they would almost just be like, oh my gosh, seriously. Like my wife has never watched me do anything like here while I'm doing something that I think if she would, she'd just be like, you're just a goofball. Like you're just like crazy over the top. But one of the comments I get the most probably of anything from people who are in the thing is what great energy.
Yeah.
They can still feel that energy. And that's hard. It's draining. It's definitely, but thinking of that and being conscious of that, I think is a real.
You're being very intentional.
Yeah.
In turning up your energy.
And trying to maintain that, even if it's not a, you know, some stuff lends itself to it naturally. If you're doing a comedy bit or you're introducing a fun exercise, but sometimes even when just processing information or presenting information that isn't normally energetic and fun,
yeah,
I still force myself to almost, and I talked about this the other day, use the example of if everyone in the audience were young children and you had to keep them engaged for as long as possible, you know, you overemphasize everything. Like, oh, let's go walking down the street. That doesn't have to maybe necessarily be that cheesy, but kind of bringing that same energy will always draw people in.
So when you're approaching an event, you think, I mean, you don't probably say to yourself, it's everybody's second graders, but you're thinking that the energy that you're going to bring is going to be, how do I keep a room full of kids focused on the screen for an hour?
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean,
and that is your number one would be energy.
I think energy, engagement, content.
Yeah.
And I think the content is definitely important, you know, and it also kind of comes down to what's the overall goal of whatever it is you're doing. Is it an informational gathering? So let's say, for example, you are training your orientation leaders on how to train,
Yeah.
how to be an orientation leader in this environment. You know, you've got a ton of information to go over. So you've got to make sure that the information gets across to them, but finding ways to break it up in between there in order to ensure that they're staying engaged, and you're teaching them how to be, you know, if you're presenting to anyone who is in turn going to be presenting to someone else, everything you do is going to be an example of what they're going to turn around and want to do, both good and bad. They're going to watch you and take a lesson from you and hopefully say, oh, well, this was good that they did. Or maybe I want to try to do this a little bit differently.
Right. So you're modeling the behavior that you then want them to exhibit.
Yes.
Right. As the trainer of of a group like the orientation leaders. Yeah, that's very cool. What do you have any other things that you put in there as engagement tools in your events? You're naturally energetic, right? You are an amazing speaker. You're really aware of all the things that you do. Yeah. No, I've seen you speak. No. I'm not just blowing smoke. This is the truth. Like, I watched the Judson Lately how-to videos, right?
It's all about the initials. As long as you got the right initials.
We do share the best initials of any people on the screen. We have the best initials. Yeah, just you know, I'm trying to help. We are all trying to help each other through this, or not through this. I should say, move forward in this, because I am going to continue to use this platform moving forward, because I've really fallen in love with it. I've seen all that it's possible, and I really love seeing folks like you really embrace it as well and succeed on this platform.
Yeah,
you know?
this isn't going away.
Right.
The usage of virtual meetings has been accelerated, really. It's been around, it's been utilized, it's now just moving forward, probably accelerated 5 to 10 years as far as just implementation from the masses.
Sure.
When we will be allowed to gather in public meetings, those aren't going away either. There's still too much benefit from in-person physical interaction in a physical environment to get rid of those completely. Yeah. But I think these will find a nice place alongside them, and being able to do these well, you know, if somebody's watching this who happens to be one of the vendors or who is looking at this as a potential future, there's a benefit to being able to work and then go sleep in your own bed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one of the other things that I have been doing that I think people can really take is using your physical environment as well.
Sure.
So for example, Jason, so if I'm running one of the game shows, I throw in sometimes like let's make a deal type thing. So I might say, okay, there's 50 of us on the screen. Whose birthday is closest to April 15th? And whoever's birthday is closest, they won. So maybe they won $10.
Okay.
And so they have $10 right now. And I say, now you might see behind me here, Jason, because you've got $10. There are 5 Angry Birds. Now, if you would like to risk your $10, 2 of those Angry Birds, one has 2 times, so you would win $20. One has 3 times, so you would win $30. 2 of those birds also have nothing, which means you lose your $10. And one of those birds, you just keep the $10 that you have right now. Would you like to risk it?
Oh, that's great.
And then I just pick one of the birds, and then you pick it up, and I would have previously had little Post-it notes or whatever underneath it.
Oh, what a fun idea. Yeah, using your environment.
And I think what's cool about that is it kind of brings people then have to pay attention. And one day I was doing a costume change. So sometimes if I'm emceeing stuff, that's one of the things I learned a long time ago. If you're ever an MC of an event of anything at all, just changing your shirt or your outfit for whatever reason has a really fun effect on the audience, because then they start looking forward to seeing what you're going to come out wearing next time around. It becomes kind of an anticipation thing. So I had gone to change just a shirt. I was changing out of my pink bunny costume from A Christmas Story and said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask a question based upon my, study this, and I'm going to come back and ask a question. The first person to answer in the chat is going to be the winner of that round. And so I left, and you can see I had all these buses.
Right.
So the buses are from a bit, and I just left some up on there on purpose. And when I came back, I said, okay, how many, pause for a little bit, buses can you see in the screen? And the first person to put the answer, and you can make it hard, you can make it easy depending on the age of the group. You know, you can hide one way back there that, you know, can barely be seen. You can put one that's kind of like half in or half out.
Right.
You know, but it adds that extra element of utilizing everything you have in front of you. It keeps people drawn in, it keeps them engaged. And I think that's just one of the other fun things about there's stuff to play with now.
Right.
You couldn't really do that on stage.
Right. You have everything right there in your environment. What you have, and if you set it up, right? So for advisors and students, really, if you're hosting an event, you set up your space, like you plan it in advance, right? And
right. It does take a little more planning sometimes, but
that makes even your budget meetings more fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to have some fun, you could come up with some really fun concepts on an environment, almost like a treasure hunt of some sort, like clues to solve for people that were just about the physical environment.
Right. It's very cool. The energy, the using the environment, the being very clear and concise in your direction. Awesome advice to all of us. Quick questions. You ready for a round of quick questions?
Absolutely. Fire away.
The first one is, what is your favorite candy?
Anything. I'm a candy freak.
Okay. If you could choose any superpower, what would it be?
The ability to speak and understand every language.
Oh, that's a cool superpower. And your final question, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Either Baby Got Back or Devil Went Down to Georgia. Because you don't have to actually sing in either of them. Because I am not a good singer. I know my strengths and I know some of my weaknesses, and tone is definitely not my strength.
Well, would you be willing to sing either one of those right now with me?
Sure. But I do have to tell you this. This is another thing you can do fun.
Yeah.
So for my trivia show that I was doing last week, one of the bonus clues was me singing a song.
Oh, fun.
And they had to figure out what the song was and then who the artist was. And I picked Kissed by a Rose from Seal. And I guarantee you I had to have sounded, and it was at the end of a long day, so my voice, and I was like,
right.
There used to be a grand tower alone on the sea.
You made the power by the day.
But did you know that when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine then be free. Yeah, so I'm a terrible singer.
Baby, I can pay you to a kiss from a rose on the baby. So that's not even your go-to karaoke song, but that's a fun song to sing.
Oh, it's a great fun song to sing, but I at least know
that
I sound bad doing it.
Oh, I also do.
But you can sing other songs. There's really no song that I sound good singing.
If I use the guitar, that's cheating. Then it tells me that like I'm in the key that I'm supposed to be singing.
Yeah. Well, this will give you an example. The Music Man, movie, musical, stage play.
Yeah.
One of my favorites of all time. Always wanted to be Harold Hill in a production of that. Freshman year of college, see a sign that they're going to be performing that for the spring big thing. So I go and I audition, and the first audition was a speaking, like one of the scenes. And it was great. I did one, and they just look at me and they're like, who are you? Because I wasn't in the theater department. It was a really small school. And they're like, okay, great. That was fantastic. Sing something for us. And I was like, okay. So they had me sing Good Night Ladies or whatever. And they go, oh, thanks. And I got a speaking part. I got like the largest non-singing speaking part in the whole thing.
You got a part. Was that the first time? Wait, was that the first time you were in a theater production?
Full-on theater production. I had been an MC for a play. I was in show choir.
Yeah.
Because I could dance.
Right.
They put me in front and they tell me not to sing too loud.
That's awesome. Wait, did you do any plays in elementary school?
No, not really.
No. It was. But you enjoyed the stage.
I enjoyed the stage, correct. I enjoyed speaking and presenting and stuff, but it was never it was never acting on stage until that Music Man production. I was Charlie Cow, the anvil salesman who tries to chase Harold Hill down inside Iowa.
Do you remember any of your lines?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
He don't know one note from another. They get to do the opening scene where they're all on the train. So you have to like sit like this. No, it ain't, but he doesn't know the territory.
Wait, keep going. Keep going. This is
Gone
fun.
with the Model T Ford. But this is other people's lines, but I know that whole opening by heart pretty much. What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? Where did you get it? What do you talk? You can talk, you can talk, you can bigger, you can talk, you can bigger, 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 you can talk, you can talk, you can talk all you want to, but it's different than it was. No, it ain't, but you got to know the territory. Gone. Gone at the back of Captain Demi Dawn. Gone with the sugar bear, pick a bit of big. Gone with the bugs and the tail that I need. Ever meet a fellow by the name of Hill? No! Just a minute. Never heard any salesman Hill. Now he doesn't know the territory. What's the fellow's line? Never worried about his line. Never worried about his line. Or a doggone thong. He just bang, beat, bell ringing, big, duck,
Judson Lapley, everybody. Judson Lapley. Thank you very much.
My
Thank
pleasure,
you.
sir. My pleasure.